Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, and we have two very special guests with us today, Rabbi Yisrael and Vivi Deren, and welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, the regional directors of Connecticut and Western Massachusetts, so you're next door neighbors to the Capital District, but you're here for a lecture, and we want to, you say in Yiddish, Kaperayim, we want to use you out as much as we can because you're really the forefront of Chabad Hasidim. And talk about Chabad Hasidim, you know, I know you're not, I don't want to say you're 20 years old, but you've been around for a long time, and there really is an incredible growth, and I want you to talk about in your lifetimes of Judaism in America and specifically Chabad in America.
Well, if we want to talk about my lifetime, then I will begin where my life began, okay, as a baby, as a child. My grandfather, actually it's our mutual grandfather, was sent by the previous Rebbe to open the first Jewish day school in America outside of the major Jewish metropolises like New York, Chicago, where there were schools for the children of the clergy and the associated, but a regular Jewish day school did not exist until the previous Rebbe began, and he sent his emissaries, his shluchim, to a whole series of cities right then and there in the very early 40s to start the first Jewish day schools. And my grandfather was one of those that were sent to Pittsburgh to start a Jewish day school there. By the time I was born and began going to school, it was a nice school. Today it's a school with over 600 children. At the time, I was the only Lubavitcher kid in the school. Maybe there was one other Chabad kid. These were just children from general Jewish background. They're probably leaning towards Orthodox, but not necessarily. The term Chabad and Lubavitch, outside of those that were directly affiliated with the Chabad-Lubavitch movement, was almost unknown. It's not that people knew the name but wasn't quite sure what it meant. The name meant nothing. People didn't know what it is. Today, and I mean literally today, what is this, June
14th.
June 14th, the New York Times crossword puzzle has a line, a Jewish organization well known for outreach. And of course the answer there is Chabad.
So it made it to the New York Times crossword
into
puzzle.
the crossword puzzle. Okay, so we're talking about, we're not talking about focusing on the Orthodox or Hasidic communities. We're talking the world. And because that's the reality of where Chabad is today. And there is not a Jewish community of any size, well, perhaps 2-3 people, but I mean an organized Jewish community that does not have an organized Chabad presence, whether it's a Chabad house, a Chabad synagogue, a Chabad school, a Chabad camp, a Chabad nursery, and so on and so forth, literally spanning the globe.
I think in my case, I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, when my father, who was sent by the previous Rebbe in 1949, when my parents were married, people in the community could not understand why a 23-year-old rabbi would throw his life away managing a cemetery. Because in those years, the future of any kind of meaningful, substantive Judaism was something that was relegated to the old country or those immigrants who had come and held on to it. But America was different, everything was going to be different. And my parents started a day school, which in the early 50s, which at that time it was the smallest community in the country to have a day school in Nashville, Tennessee. And so, now there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds all over the country.
After we were married, the Rebbe sent us to the western New England region, but the first place we came to was to Amherst, Massachusetts. Amherst is a college town. With the surrounding towns, it's 5 colleges. And we went there to open a Chabad house, a Chabad center. So I figured the way to start, you meet the Jewish community. And where do you start with the Jewish community? Well, start with the president. And that was the first appointment I made in Amherst. I was the president of the Amherst Jewish community, a professor. And I came in, introduced myself, and then said that we're going to be starting a Chabad house here, and I'm looking for advice. You're here. What do you think I should do? The answer, Rabbi, do you know what I think you should do? Go back to Brooklyn.
Really? You
Yes,
said that
that-
right to your face.
Right. That was the welcome. Hello. Okay, well, we didn't take their advice, and almost 45 years later, we now have in our region, 28, 29 Chabad houses? Okay, literally all over the state of Connecticut and Western Massachusetts. That is true. That story repeats itself in every state of the Union and in basically almost every country in the world, where you have Chabad presence. I remember as a kid standing at a Farbrengen, a Hasidic gathering that the Rebbe would speak, and he would talk about the importance of reaching out and making sure that every Jew, and then when there would be puts on tefillin, knows that Purim is coming, knows that Passover is coming and you need to eat matzah, knows that Shavuos is coming and you should be in the shul to hear the Ten Commandments. And you hear the words, reach out to every Jew, and think, like, how in the world can that be done? I mean, we don't even, how many Jews do I know? How many Jews does everybody in this room know? How do we reach out to every Jew? That was 40, 50 years ago. Today, the Rebbe's vision is a reality. There's hardly a Jew in the world that hasn't been touched and is not touched on a regular basis by Chabad in one form or another.
I think something else that we've witnessed a change, in some cases actually been part of, but definitely something that we watched develop over the years. It's not just the growth by numbers, but there's also specific populations, specific segments of the population that have been identified and targeted. So, for example, Chabad started the Friendship Circle, which serves children with special needs and their families. And this has brought into Jewish life families, individuals who this has been their only entree. In many cases, they felt that the Jewish community, Jewish life was really outside of
Just
their...
explain the Friendship Circle, what it is.
Well, it as I said, it serves children with special needs, so there'll be the Friends at Home program.
So the families also. I
And
know
the families, yes.
personally around here that, you know, like, well, you like my child, or you accept them, maybe that would be then you'll accept me too, and you have the
for
whole
sure.
families.
For
and
sure.
That's what I'm saying.
For sure.
Well, I think there's actually like two sides to the Friendship Circle. There are the families and children with special needs that are served. I think there's a more important segment of the Friendship Circle, or more impactful segment of the Friendship Circle, and that's the teen volunteers that are doing that serving.
Exactly.
And the profound changes that occur in the teens' lives as a result of the year 2 or 3, and some even more, of what they're doing, and the added sensitivity that they get, and the way that they begin to look at other human beings from an entirely different perspective, and begin to get an understanding of, we don't live in our own little bubbles, but we live in a broad world that's filled with all kinds of people, 99% of whom are very different than we are. And yet we're still part of that world. And when they become adults, their perspective on life and community is entirely changed. And we hear that again and again and again from the teens, from their parents, the change in the lives. In a certain respect, that's probably one of the most authentic expressions of the Rebbe's vision of, on the one hand, the incredible importance of the individual and the absolute interconnectivity and unity of all of us together. And it expresses itself so beautifully in Friendship Circle, but it's true all across the board.
Every individual is important, no matter who they are. People just in the Jewish community, I mean, I visit people in prisons, and that's also was a call from the, and people give it me over the head. Prison, what are you dealing with these people, Rabbi? What do you need them for? Prison people, felons. And, also, they wouldn't say those words about special needs. That's not nice, but their reactions speak louder than words, like, I'm not going to have my kid be friends with their kid. I mean, no one says those words. But, another thing when you were talking about the expanse of Chabad, one of the biggest questions the rabbi is, I'm sure every rabbi gets, is, you taught the miracles in Egypt. Everybody knows the Passover story because everybody goes to the Seder. Maybe I would be Jewish also, or they act Jewish if I'd see the Hudson River split, or, if you give me a miracle like that, I also, but show me a miracle, show me where God is. And really, I try to tell them exactly this point. It doesn't look miraculous, like, some alien from outer space came down and did something or another. It's not crazy. But it is. If you think about it, it's a miracle in our face over here. Because, like you said, and I had it personally also. I gave up my life from college. Are you crazy? You have your life's made for you, and you're throwing it in the garbage. What are you going to be? Someone had told me you're going to say, like, he went to his grandfather's funeral. He sat by the casket. There was some old rabbi saying something. That's what you're going to do with your life, and. I don't want to say the joke's on them, but because, every Jew's important, but, here the blessing has come out. We're on the winning side. The Orthodox Judaism, Chabad Hasidim is well known, growing, expansive, where the rest of Judaism, unfortunately, is really going downhill.
There's a French philosopher by the name of Pascal. He was once asked by the King of France to prove the existence of God. And he said, "Why the Jews, Your Majesty? The Jews. You want a miracle? The fact that we're still here today, 3,500 years after we left Egypt and first became a people, and are still existing here today, that is a miracle, I think, when you think about it, whose implications are far greater than if the Hudson were to split all of a sudden. If the Hudson were to split, you would have 100 different explanations of how it happened. Okay, there was an earthquake, a volcano, right? Somebody dropped a trailer load of jello, whatever it is. But that the Jews are around after 3,000 years, and not 3,000 easy years. After 3,000 years, not a century in which there hasn't been concerted efforts to destroy us. And we're still here. No one else is. Have you ever met an ancient Egyptian? How many Phoenicians do you know?
Never heard of them.
Philistines? Well, we act maybe like that, but they're not here anymore. Okay, and that is a miracle of and an expression of God's hand in history ongoing.
I think you're speaking about the individual and the community, and there's community on a small level, and how that expresses itself in a larger sense, family. So there's an interconnectedness in Chabad that directly impacts how the Jewish people as a whole experience community. About the targeted populations, the new segments, one of those is tourists. And over the last 20 years or so, Chabad houses, Chabad centers communities that did not have a large Jewish population, but they have significant tourism and many Jewish people, coming to visit there, so that they'll be, open to, oh my goodness, it's Hanukkah. I didn't bring a menorah on the cruise, and landing in St. Thomas, and there's Chabad on the deck handing out menorahs. But then for these same people, it's not just they go...
If I can interrupt, I recall getting a frantic telephone call, first time, and the only time it ever happened to me, from a ship, a passenger on a ship they had to patch through, a rabbi. And he was on a ship. He had been there for Yom Kippur service, and he realized he doesn't have an esrog, what is necessary for Sukkot. And he said, can you help me? I asked him, when is your next port of call? He said, Athens tomorrow. And so there was a Chabad rabbi standing on the dock when the ship came in with an esrog for him. That's why. Why did he call me? Because he knows, as anyone who needs something Jewish knows today, the address, it's Chabad. Anywhere in the world for any Jewish need that exists.
I think that's an important point now, because what people are seeing that in most organizations, well, if you're going to be a member, you come through the door, you're going to sign up, pay membership dues. Hey, everybody will accept you.
Oh, no, that's not the case. Actually, Chabad is also a membership organization.
Really?
Absolutely. But you become a member at birth.
Yeah.
Born a Jew, you're a member of Chabad.
Well, you don't have to pay any dues. That is important, because that's really how many, or practically all Jewish organizations, hey, you want to pay and join up. And here, what are you going to get out of a tourist? They're here today, gone tomorrow. A prisoner, I can tell you, you're not going to get anything from. A disabled child, they're not going to be president of the United States. These people you're not going to get that much. But here, Chabad deals with them where, like we've seen before, nobody else does really, because again, you're not going to get anything from them. But but it really has ramifications, because people see that. So when they do have money, say, hey, do you want me for my money, or you want me because you like me? And they say, hey, they say, well, if you can like a prisoner, you can like a disabled child, you can like a tourist, you like Jewish people. That's really what it is. And I'm ready to be part of this organization.
What motivates a Chabad shliach, a Chabad emissary, is not just that, what it is that I can get from whoever it is that I'm dealing with. That's obviously not part of the picture. But it's not just that everyone is important, but that every one of us, and that's true of every human being, is here for one purpose, and that's to make the world that we live in a better place. And obviously there are so many ways that it can be done. But at the end of the day, that is the life goal that I believe every human being ought to have. And if we were to just express that in the way we live, is this going to make the world a better place or not? And so many of the moral quandaries that we supposedly have become no-brainers. Of course, or of course not. And that's what the Rebbe taught, that's what the Rebbe emphasized, that's what the Rebbe almost, as it were, drummed into us, those that stood and studied at his feet. The importance of every action that we take. Yes, every human being is divine. But that's not enough. Everything that you do is important, because it can, ergo should, be leading towards the most important thing of all, which is making this world a better place, a holier place, a godlier place, because of our having been here for the time given to us.
That's the bigger picture. We were talking about the smaller picture. Every individual is so important, which is really big news, because, suicide is really one of the biggest. I feel so bad for people. They're young people, and if a tragedy happened, that's one thing. But to do it yourself, there's no meaning in life. There's no higher purpose in life for these people. And so therefore, again, we emphasize, the Rebbe always emphasized how great he was. And maybe you tell a few stories yourself because you knew the Lubavitcher Rebbe. But like every individual was super important. I mean, people in America, there's 300 million people. In the country, there's 7 billion people. And what would the world be going on without me? No one needs me. I mean, that's obviously what people's attitude sometimes is. A computer could do a better job than I can. But here, the individual, the Rebbe emphasized, was so important. But it's the macro idea also, like you're saying, is the Rebbe had a bigger vision. I mean, it was beautiful what he did with every individual and just making the whole world really saw a bigger picture, the world to bring perfection, which really no one talks about that. It's so big of a world. No one talks about the individual. No one talks about the bigger picture. They're just trying to get through life and making it by themselves. And the Rebbe had a vision of the smallest thing and obviously on the biggest idea also in the world.
I think that probably the most fundamental problem that we face as a society is that we don't have a common understanding of what in the world we're here for. It doesn't exist in society as a whole. And that wasn't necessarily true 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, when I was in school, it was there. It wasn't necessarily explicitly spoken about, but hey, we knew it. We knew it from our parents, and of course I went to a Jewish school. So while it wasn't spoken about necessarily while we were studying geography or math or social studies, but it certainly was explicit in what we were studying in Jewish studies. And that was true to a great extent at society as a whole. Today we are told you need to do the right thing. But what's right? We're not here to tell you what's right. But whatever it is, okay, when you grow up, you got to do the right thing. And how am I to determine what's right and what's wrong? Well, this we're not going to get into, okay? So don't mix us up with the facts. Just do the right thing. I mean, that's what moral education, for the most part, is today. Well, just, don't steal because you'll get arrested. And if I can do it without getting arrested, don't take drugs because they're dangerous. And if the rush, the good feeling I get by taking them feels better than the potential danger, then why shouldn't I? Those answers aren't being given. And there are answers, and there are good answers. But those that know them, unfortunately, have become afraid to publicly proclaim them. The Rebbe wasn't. And the Rebbe instilled in us the responsibility of saying them and teaching them. And ultimately, it'll prevail.
The Rebbe was a fearless leader on one hand, and the other hand, many people, a person off the street, and the Rebbe would give his blessing for a few seconds, but the quality and not quantity of time, and to a person off the street. You see a person who's a leader and a worldwide movement, he would only talk to a president or a congressman, a mayor, somebody important, and the Rebbe would give his full attention to some person right off the street that, again, quote unquote, the world would say, he's a nothing, doesn't have any money, no status, and the Rebbe he would give attention to the mayor, he would give attention to this person off the street, and that's where the Rebbe could be fearless, be a fighter, and he could be the most compassionate person in the world, care about every individual, and some little person has a little bit of a problem or whatever. maybe a small problem to the world, but to that person it's a problem.
There is a common thread in the description of what it was like to meet the Rebbe that you hear from people from all walks and stations of life, almost like in the same words. When he looked at me, I felt like there was, as far as he was concerned, there was nothing and no one else in the entire universe. That wasn't a product of charisma or of focus. It was the truth. The Rebbe saw in every individual the infinite ability that he or she possesses. That spark of the infinite God, the divine in every human being. There's no such thing as infinity plus one. When he looked at you, he looked at infinity and then tried to draw it out so that you begin to feel it as well. Because it's true. The immense ability that every human being has, whether it's expressed in fact by this one becoming mayor, as you say, and this one becoming a panhandler, is irrelevant. That was. What's important is what is and what's going to be. And the, quote, panhandler is capable of far greater things than the mayor has been doing up until now. Not that the mayor can't be doing much greater things as well, but every one of us has that infinite ability. And that's what the Rebbe spent his life drawing out from every one of us.
Well, that's what we see, that is tremendously successful in his lifetime, but it's even more. It's been 25 years since he passed away, and Chabad has only grown. You know, a lot of times people said, well, the Rebbe's gone, it's so Rebbe-centered that the movement will, wither away, so to speak. And many people were predicting that, but 25 years later, we don't have to look for predictions. We see in hindsight that, if anything, it's been an explosion of Chabad houses around the world.
Absolutely.
I think one area where that really is very dramatically evident in the Rebbe's mitzvah campaigns, and one of those mitzvah campaigns to get people to perform mitzvot is the Shabbos candlelighting campaign. And on the surface of it, in itself, it's a beautiful thing. Every woman and a girl above the age of 3 or so should light candles at the beginning of the Sabbath, late Friday afternoon, before sunset. In and of itself, that's a beautiful thing. It is so symbolic of so much more, because the relationship of Shabbat to the 6 days of the week is the godly direction, the godly blessing that everything of our technological, etc. world is supposed to lead up to be guided by the spirituality, by the divine, by the holy, and to be blessed by God, that interrelationship. All of that begins at the initiative that women take. And by focusing on the importance of Shabbos candles, the Rebbe is underscoring the importance, the impact that women have on bringing out the individual value of each person. It's not that we're a holy community, we're a sacred community when we come together. That too. But that Kedusha, holiness, sanctity begins in the individual person. It's not the place, it's the individual person. And the Shabbos candlelighting campaign highlights that. Not just women as adults, but talking about children. In this case, it's little girls, but children as a whole, and they're relating to children. And there are so many beautiful stories of interactions that the Rebbe had with children, that he took them seriously. And he took the impact of their actions seriously, that the good that a child can do can have far-reaching effects.
Like what we were saying about that, a child is, again, people write off children, you're just a kid, what do you know? I mean, that's, again, an attitude, wasn't with the Rebbe.
You know what occurs to me?
We have just one more minute to go. So.
I'll leave this one for another show. It's a point I think that's fairly difficult, or not difficult, but it needs to be elaborated upon. But what Mrs. Deren was saying about even a child, and not just even a child doing one thing, saying one thing, or even thinking one thing has the ability to profoundly affect the entire world.
Thank you very much. It was totally out of time, but it can go on for hours with you. But thank you for joining with us to tell us the
Pleasure to
miracle
be
and the beauty of the Chabad. Thank you.